Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Orchestra's webinar all around digital transformation in global supply chains with a focus on people, process, and modern technology. I'm delighted to introduce the three esteemed panelists, starting with Todd. Todd Earls is Chief Information Officer at OIA Global. He likes to develop and drive execution of holistic IT strategy, which delivers sustainable and scalable operations combined with innovative and transformative solutions. So this is the perfect tagline for this seminar. And prior to his role at OIA, he held senior leadership roles at Eaton Corporation, Stryker Corporation, AM Todd, as well as Procter & Gamble. To Todd's right is Dr. Philipp Blumenthal, also known as Dr. Freight, and he's the Chief Transformation Officer at ICU Worldwide, one of the leading LCL consolidation ocean carriers. At ICU, Philipp is responsible for digitally transforming the organization and empowering freight forwarders to become data forwarders. So prior to that, he was VP Operations and Sales at Freightos, which is a SaaS marketplace for direct carrier bookings. And he's also spent some time at DB Schenker together with me. Our third panelist is Anders Nordahl, who is a very, very accomplished operational executive with over 30 years of hands-on experience in global supply chain management across various domains. He spent many, many years at Kuehne+Nagel, where he had a very, very important role of digitally transforming the ocean freight business. And this started 20 years ago. So he was an early initiator and early adopter, really, of technology tools. And he's also spent some time at Schenker. And he's currently working at Orchestra in the role of Global Solutions Head, and he's working a lot with customers to really make digital transformation a reality. I'm your host, Heiner Merman. I'm delighted to moderate this webinar, and I think it'll be very, 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 very excellent to focus really on really the 2 or 3 pillars that are fundamental in making sure a digital transformation is successful. It's really all around people, it's all around processes, and deploying the right technology that makes everything happen. So let's start with the people. So the question is, how can an organization foster a culture of innovation that supports digital transformation? And if it's okay with you, Todd, maybe you can lead the way.
Yeah, absolutely, Heiner, and thank you so much for having myself and OIA Global be part of this webinar. I'm excited to be here. It's a great question, right? So culture is the key word for me in this question, and culture is hard. So it's something that we know when we change a culture or try to drive a new culture or adopt a culture. It really needs to permeate throughout an organization. And so along with those things come training and organizational change management and a lot of the key aspects of that. But also say really regarding digital transformation is this shouldn't be something separate from your organization's culture, your corporation's culture as it is. It really should be interweaved with it. So each company is growing and is successful, and it's successful based on that culture as one of those aspects. And so the digital transformation should just accelerate what's already good and inherent within that company. And then, really how to get there is people think about digital transformation and innovation, really is the shiny objects, right? That's the first thing that comes to mind is the latest and greatest technologies, the whatever's new and people are reading about every day. And I would really say that it needs to be permeated throughout the organization on everything that you do. And I think there's a really good graphic by Harvard Business Review that shows core, adjacent, and transformational innovation. And so innovation doesn't have to be just the shiny object. It's bringing new capabilities and new skill sets and new life into your core systems, your adjacent markets, and even those transformational shiny objects. And I think as long as you have a diversified portfolio of initiatives across that journey, interweaved with your corporate culture, I think it can be, accelerate, really that growth and the value that you're bringing into your company.
Yeah, Spot on, Philip. If you take your experience at Schenker, but also at Freightos, and what you're currently doing at Ecolines, how do you find that whole people and culture topic? So taking hold in the digital transformation, and what are some of the topics that you're implemented to sort of get traction and make a move on this?
Yeah. So first of all, within the organization, there are often a lot of good ideas, right? So often people see in their process step items that they can innovate. But they can't change it because they are part of this overall process, right? So the first thing is basically giving confidence in the organization to bring up innovation potential. That's I think the first item is basically this element of confidence, of wanting to change. The second thing is I've learned this actually from my little kids. They are asking everything why, 3-year-olds asking why, and you wonder what this is. This is a human instinct to understand why things are changing and why innovation is so important. Aside from the confidence, giving a vision to someone that is part of a process to what is the overall bigger picture of innovation. If you change a little process that goes into change management, it goes, but also the other way is like creating excitement around something, explaining the why, right? These are, I think, the two items. And the third item is often innovation projects are complex, and they're often very complex for those that need to implement them on the that are part of the process. So if you're like a desk level operator needs to implement implementation and innovation in its process, they not only need to be confident that change is good, they need to understand why. But the other thing is we need to break it down into very specific steps that we can innovate, right? And so that's basically, I think, the three elements that are the building blocks for a good innovation project or process with what we've done.
Let's double click for a minute on the why, because it's an easy concept, but it's really, I find it hard to do, right? It's sort of, if you are able to convince a bricklayer that he's not just laying brick, but he's building a cathedral to God, that has, of course, much more meaning, and the why is much more profound. How are you approaching that why, and are you doing it based on sort of fear, say, if we don't do this, we cannot continue to exist? Or have you been able to sort of unlock a much more inspirational why?
Yeah, it depends really on the project, but often you can the positive image, this excitement building around, right? And it depends a little bit to the needs of each person in the organization or each group. If it's career growth, learning, right, especially with the younger generation, right, or career stability, and then basically linking this with the personal needs of every employee, connecting basically with innovation, and that's often where it triggers, right? So at the moment, I'm working with a lot of colleagues that are like below 35 in India, and their need is very much, I want to learn, because if I learn, I further my career, right? And so basically explaining that this innovation is good, that they can learn, is something very, very important. But an American president once said, like, I think leading is standing on a graveyard. You have a lot of people under you, but no one's listening, right? And so that's I think something that is the second part of it. It's this over communicating. It's constantly communicating, and I'm always saying to everyone, you need to be able to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and explain why we're doing this. And you can only do this if you constantly repeat the message of this why. This why.
Very good, Anders. You've been involved with and in hundreds of customer projects. How do you deal with that culture, people topic on the customer side?
Well, I think if you look at the digital transformation, I mean, we go back to the 70s with telex, and telefax came later on, and you know, when we go to the mid of the 1990s, when we started to use email, it was seen as, oh, we only need 1 or 2 people in the office need email. Today we take it for granted, right? We are now talking about how can we get away from emails. We don't want to operate with emails because information is stuck in somebody's personal email account, right? And I think the culture thing is then surrounded with, well, it's safe for me. I know where I find information. Mm-hmm. And the adaptation of technology is, it needs to be at the tip of your fingers, right? I mean, back in my early days, you arrive at the office and you had literally 50 meters of fax paper on the floor, right? You have to go through. But I knew where to find the information. It was there. And I trusted it because the people on the other side did their job. Today, we are not looking at a daily cadence of getting information. We want to have it in real time, right now. And I think the biggest challenge when it comes to the adaptation is the notion that you don't know what good looks like. What you don't know, you don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think an organization of today needs to be operating digital, think digital, live digital, and adaptation of technology. I mean, I come back to the email topic. It took probably about 4 or 5 years for that one to become standard in our industry. You look at ChatGPT, it took not even a couple of months to reach the same number of users. Mm. So how quickly can, number one, can we accept that this is something we want, this is something we need, and does it have a purpose? And do people feel that this new innovative way, we talk about it as innovation because we don't know yet, it's something unknown, and people really don't like unknowns in general. Most people are very afraid of something that they're not comfortable with. So it needs to come, number one, from the top. It needs to be coming from people with a lot of domain knowledge, and they need to be able to translate how this contributes. And to Philip's point, it needs to be validated that this actually has a purpose.
What are some of the mistakes, Anders, that you've seen organizations doing when embarking on their digital transformation journeys?
I think not understanding the full end-to-end of their own business, Heiner. Mm. I think a lot of businesses today, they don't really understand all the different cogs that is needed to operate and run a business. Mm. And then you end up with left hand doesn't know what right hand is doing, and you still have the same logo on the door, same logo on the building, and you don't really understand how comes things are not working, and because you really don't have domain expertise that really understands the full end-to-end of the organization. Mm. And typically it's then left to somebody with an IT background to try to understand all these cultural challenges, which not always works.
Yeah, good point. Philip and Todd, what are some of your experiences in regard to sort of mistakes that companies are making?
So often the digital transformation project is siloed. It's a separate unit, a separate entity. It's not part of the core, and that obviously is lacking the focus of often, especially in the supply chain business, the P&L owners, right? They're saying like they come to me if they want to do anything, right? So that's, I think, a mistake. And how do you overcome this? Is that when you think basically of the key stakeholders, they often are P&L owners. They think in quantitative figures like revenue, gross profits, EBITDA. And what you need to do is you need to break down the digital transformation exactly these figures that make them understandable in this, right? It's nice that you basically can think, okay, I can save 2 minutes, right, for a person if I automate something, but what does it mean in terms of EBITDA savings if I implement this? And that's basically how you gain ownership. And often I see this is basically not done and it's a responsibility of those who are that are transforming an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Andres and Philip, I agree completely with both of you. These need to be intertwined, right? This is not an IT effort, and it's not a business function or business unit effort. This is a a corporation effort together. Certainly, I echo what your thoughts were there. I would also say, from a technology perspective, as much as we'd like to snap our fingers and all of a sudden be digitally transformed, this is a transformation, right? By the definition of the word, transforming takes some time. And as I was thinking about this more, I think about a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, right? So it takes a little time, and if a caterpillar had fingers and they could snap them, they probably would, and they wish they could get there, but they can't. And what I mean by that is there's a journey here that people need to be committed to, and so the top-down leadership, certainly, and top-down support needs to be there. It needs to deliver business value along the way. In that period of time, whatever time that is on that transformation, we need to set the right expectations, in twofold. Is one, it takes a little bit of time, but two, during that time, we're going to deliver innovative capabilities, throughout the progress of that transformation. And at the end, we're going to be transformed, but it's not binary. It's not, one day it's one color and the next day it's another color. It's a journey delivering value along the way. And I think as long as you have that support, that integrated business and IT, partnership and delivering business value along the way, I think you can avoid a lot of those mistakes. But I would say too, some mistakes are okay, right? One of the things that we really like to do is we skunkworks and we pilot and we do low cost things, and if they work out, fantastic. If they don't, fantastic. We learned and we can move on and keep on progressing. So there's bad mistakes or mistakes that we want to avoid in the future, but there's also, I would say, a culture that we want to build that little mistakes are good, right? Because we're trying things.
No, those are very, very good points. So if we take this people/culture topic as the foundation for any digital journey, the technology itself is, of course, fundamental in making anything happen, right? But what are some of the tools that organizations should look at, and how do they choose it? And how do they not fall in love with shiny balls that think it's going to solve all their problems in sort of one giant step? Maybe Todd, you can start with that one.
Yeah. For me, it really comes back to strategy, and we touched on some of these points, and really driving after what that business value is. And strategy can be a very nebulous thing to think about. So, hey, where are we going to be in 3 years? It's much easier to talk about what's on my to-do list for tomorrow than it is to think out, that far. And so one of the things I really try to hone in on is really a framework for a strategy, and that framework includes voice of industry. So what's happening out in the markets? What do software providers like Orchestra have? What are our competitors doing, et cetera? But external forces that are out there that can enable us forward or inhibit us backwards. But then voice of customer. So what do we need internally? And in some cases that people are looking at what do I need the next day. In some cases they're looking at, depending on who you're talking to, they're looking out multiple years. And then as a state to be state, within your ecosystem, and then a roadmap, and then what benefits you're going to get out of there. And so when we talk about technologies, it's really that holistic picture to hone in on what problems are you trying to solve, what value is it going to bring your company, and then and only then you can say we know that there's technologies out there that can solve these issues and deliver that value. Where a bit of a trap that I think is out there, certainly, and we've talked to it, is people see the shiny object, they try to find a use case for that shiny object, and it doesn't really deliver sustainable and scalable value to your company. It may, but it also runs a pretty high risk of not. And so, honing in on those technologies, I think, is really a process in making sure that we really understand why we're going after it, and that naturally leads to the technologies that will enable the business value creation that we're seeking.
Mm-hmm. Philip, you have sort of front row seats to that whole sort of technology and tool topic. What is your perspective and experience?
So the first thing is that I think generally people jump to conclusions or solutions very quickly, right? So like we have a problem, that's the solution. And it's nothing to do really with technology, but like it is important technology because it can become very costly, right? And so the first thing that usually I do is like, hey, let's stop. And the first thing what we need to do is really like understand the requirements. And when you break down the requirements, I think this is like 3/4 of the way to your solution that you're selecting. right? And the requirements don't need to be like the end all be all. It just basically back to what's the EBITDA uplift. What are the core requirements in order to enable this, right? So, for example, if you want to automate, let's say, a documentation process, right, in technology, right? Like, what is it? What piece of technology do you require? What does it need to connect to, right? What is it? What it needs to view? What it needs to data that needs to go into? Document these requirements. And then second thing is test these requirements with stakeholders internally within the company, but also your partners, right? Often we have like API connections with other partners, and it all looks shiny from the outside. When we discuss it, you don't get the data you need to. You don't get the latency. You know, it takes 20, 30 seconds for something to come back. That's already a lot with an API. And test the requirements with your partners. Right, and then basically from there, it's actually an easy step to select the right solution partner after you really know what you want, right? Because then it's almost like a clear next step, and that's basically the step where I think from a leadership perspective, we need to put this brake on the pedal where we're saying basically like let's get the requirements first and have you tested it with your partners.
Mm-hmm. Anders, in your perspective, you were in many instances where we're looking at tools for the organizations you're working for, but you're also offering tools to shippers. What's your experience in this topic?
Well, I give an example, right? So we were pioneering and onboarding order booking, so online booking to customers in the 2000s, right? And when we built the tool, people didn't realize that one shipper is shipping from somewhere in Asia. There are 8,000 operators. To which operator should this booking now go electronically? Right? So I think one of the key parts when you're selecting tools, number one, it needs to have a purpose, it needs to have a function, but you need to understand the organizational impact, right? And equally so, I mean, when you open up your email, it's already orchestrated for you because it's sent to your private email. But as an operator in an enterprise environment, you don't want to go into a system and have 2 million shipments since 5 years that is reflecting every single person in the company. And same with an ERP system. It needs to be narrowed down so that your day becomes effective, so that you don't have to look for things to do, but the system needs to tell you what to do. And equally so, when we're talking about documentation, yes, we want to upload documents, but to what job does the document go? Who is allowed to see this document? What document classification does it have? So picking the right solution is absolutely important. And equally so, a customer says, look, I want to have an email every time there's a document, but they don't want to have an email every 2 minutes. They want to maybe have one email every 2-3 hours, which is more effective. So understanding the use case is absolutely critical. And to Philip's point in terms of the latency, it needs to be very, very snappy. It needs to be to the point. It needs to be honed in to deliver exactly what you need as an operator and as a user, as a customer, as a shipper. Everyone is participating, right? And equally so, coming back to my previous point, if all participants, unfortunately we're not there, but if all participants would have a digital capability with the modern technology with the same latency, we would have this as a step of our fingers, but we're not yet there. But those are some of the key points, Heiner. Make it people focused and process focused, and don't try to make it shiny and glossy if it's not needed to be shiny and glossy. And I still remember my days back when the AS400, the green screen, it was probably one of the most effective systems that an operator could work with because it just did exactly what it needed to do. Nothing more, nothing less.
Maybe Todd, a little follow-up for you. I was just talking before to a business partner that sort of doing the digitalization journey with SAP, and it's a 10-year long project, and he called it open heart surgery while they're still trying to do their day-to-day to-be business. What in your experience in the various organizations that you were in is, so when you make the call to embark on a massive project like an SAP type Oracle or a massive ERP type end-to-end digitization project versus deploying more nimble tools like digital platforms that can can get you much faster, but may not be that sort of big solution.
Yeah, no, Hunter, it's a good comparison, right? And in some cases, and it's honestly becoming more of the minority of the cases, you need the larger monolithic systems that are out there, and the technologies that we've seen come to fruition in the last 5 to 10 years that are much more modular based, much more agile, connected, hyper connected to all the data sources around there. I would venture to say 80-90% of anything anymore is really taking that more agile approach and modular approach to deliver those capabilities. And in that comparison, I think about those monolithic systems. They might have all this grandiose set of capabilities, and then if you look at it, then the question always is, how much do you really use? And the answer is probably, in many cases, less than 20%. And so, long story short, is you're installing and supporting and maintaining this huge set of capabilities that are fantastic. Could be the best in the world, the best in class in the world. But really, you're using that much of it. So I love technologies where it's gone in the last 5 to 10 years of this modularization, getting exactly what you want when you want it, deploying value along the way, right? That value creation on this digital transformation journey, and so I very much have a bias towards that small, quick, fast delivery capabilities as soon as possible methodology versus what we've seen historically in IT in the world.
Yeah, with you too. I mean, 10 years is a long time to realize a project, and the world may look completely different in 10 years.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
What are some of the real life success cases you were involved with, Todd?
Yeah, so I would say, from a digital transformation standpoint, thinking about very complex problems. When I think about the word digital, I was asked the other day, hey, isn't digital just not analog, right? When computers came in the 1980s, does that mean everything turned to digital? And I think we have a new version of digital, and each of us have our own definition of digital. But mine is really focused around this unlimited computing power and hyperconnectivity that we have, the ability to solve problems based on massive amounts of data quickly. And I would say that, certainly from a real life example, I've had complex problems in the businesses. So really understanding the businesses, as was pointed out on here, and the issues that we have, taking the data sources from there and then being able to transform, on that journey to solve that issue. And it really starts with getting that data, right? Understanding the descriptive data that you have and having a view of it, and be able to understand what that problem looks like, and then building on using artificial intelligence or machine learning, building on predictive capabilities onto there to understand when something is going to happen within there, and then even to the point where you can take it even a step further and have it be prescriptive as well. And so we've had use cases in the past where we have these complex problems. We start out saying, what data do we need to really solve that problem? Have a good view of that data, layer on these predictive models, and then even move into a prescriptive state where it's automatically adjusting on the fly. So you can, that really applies to any industry, and certainly to the supply chain industry with all the complex data that we have out there and all the movement of goods around the world. And so certainly that type of path, has been very beneficial.
Nice. What about you, Philip?
Yeah, so we had one challenge that we've worked on the last 2 years, which is that every forwarder, carrier, anyone who's in the service industry has that only 18% of our quotations and bookings came in through some kind of digital way. The rest was basically emailed in, phoned in. It was very manual, labor intense. And so what is the effect out of this that we had? The first thing is that the business was became very transactional, right? Because it's very easy to basically replace this email address that you send a booking to with another email address and send it to someone else if the prices are similar. There's very little differentiation factor in the service industry if you're transporting, for example, a container, a shipment from A to B. Right. So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you become more sticky? And the second thing is, how do you become more efficient with basically replacing this manual quoting, manual booking with automating processes? Right. So that was basically the challenge. And so in the last 2 years, we brought this from an 18% of all bookings to a 60% or 61% of all bookings that are booked in a digital fashion, either via API ADI or on basically our own platform, the UI of EQ called EQ360. And so this was a huge success, not only because we were able to obviously automating the processes of data entry, the data is more accurate, but also we were able to show that we created stickiness. We created stickiness with our customers, showing, for example, that we're able that our volume booked per customer that books digitally is higher than those that are not booking digitally, right, among the same customer group. And so we were able to show broken down to an EBITDA level that basically digital transformation has a business impact. And we've done this basically over the 2 years and delivered this project.
Yeah, very, very good. If you take your experience at Freightos, which has been early innovator in industry, if you like, along with Flexport and others, what are some experiences there that you experience in terms of transforming the analog process to digital, which is essentially the foundation of Freightos?
Yeah, it's a lot of change management, I have to say. I remember I was on the call with a CEO of a smaller ocean carrier, trying to convince him to sell freight online, right? And his message was, we will never, this industry will never sell freight online. This is not something we're going to do. And I think now we're laughing about it, right? At that point, obviously, it's a setback if you hear this. So the question is basically that, like, don't take this no for granted. Like, keep basically your view. We always say fail fast. Yes, fail fast in basically your approach, but don't fail fast in overall your vision that you have. Right? It's again this why. Like we're in a path. We want to do this and stick to this. So I think this was probably the major takeaway that we had is basically like we were the first ones creating a marketplace at Freightos, and we needed to make this happen, right? There was no other choice. So I think this was number one. And the second thing is basically that in the way I highlighted a little bit, like how we did this is basically like things you learn, right? So for example, we thought at the beginning, like, if you become member of all these associations, they will have major benefit from all this quoting and booking, but it was not the case. Right? And you learn and you need to adjust your approach, right? So for the digital transformation overall, like keep to basically what your mission is, but adjust the process along the way and keep explaining why.
Yeah. So how did you get the community on board? Which is
it's basically like showcasing success, right? So like to take this little success, I remember the best example I'm sharing today is like we wanted to implement chat online, right? So and we thought like who's ever coming to our platform and chatting, and we had this board game manufacturer in upstate New York that just transitioned the ownership. A new managing director came in, and they had a strategic change of now sourcing also from China, which they've never done before. They only sourced from or manufactured themselves in the Northeast themselves. And they got a major order from Walmart, Target, Amazon, and all of a sudden had 125 tons of air freight shortly before. Just as a reference, this is basically a 747 to fill just with these board games, right? They had it to fill shortly before Christmas, right? And the managing director came on board to chatted with us, and it was $1 million order that we got via chat. And so what we've done, back to your topic, is no one would have believed this was the way, but we showcased basically like that we were able to not because of we were on chat, but we were able to basically execute on this and showcase to the community that through basically a digital approach, we're able to be part of the community. And that's something like showcasing these success factors to convince others that are not convinced. Yeah. One vehicle. There are certainly others, but we could go on.
Anders, what are some of the highlights for you in terms of cases that?
Oh, just to continue on what Philip said, there is exactly what I mentioned before, right? It's the ability to get the job done. I have this thing to do, I get to talk to the right person, everything is done, and this is the success, right? But I think in terms of course, I've been very fortunate to be part of the digitization of ocean freight since the early 90s. Okay, and of course the challenges was when we started. It was a whole level of the what can you say, the trust level of collaboration between competitors. I think that's the ability to change that, transform that, was probably one of the foundational things. And this was creating a standardization of how sailing schedules are shared, creating how bookings are being done electronically with ocean carriers. And not one version to this one, another version to another carrier, but standardization across the industry. And having been part of orchestrating that, I think is one of the absolute key highlights, at least on my career, because without that orchestration and harmonization, I think a lot of what we take for granted today would be very, very hard. I mean, an example of a sailing schedule, right? The shipping lines, they look at the sailing schedule of one single vessel from one port to another port, from another port to another port. They don't understand the journey, right? And for them to translate this into a service sailing schedule was a huge transformation. So I think a lot of these early things that we today, as I said, we take it for granted. This was massive accomplishment that we managed to get through. But you know, Heiner, you go back to the 90s when I started developing my first TMSs. I mean, we already had the predictive analytics as part of the idea of the solution. We said, this is a customer. The system should already say, well, in the past, the customer did this and this and this, but the technology was just not there. You know, we didn't have the capability to load hundreds of thousands of shipment in memory, where in real time it would just, you know, trickle down. It just wasn't there. But again, laying down the foundational inspirations that we're now finally starting to see has been incredible. But again, it's taken us 25 years to get there. Yeah?
And now with the introduction of AI, so new possibilities are upon us, right? And it will be incredible to see what will happen there.
Absolutely. I mean, but then again, you have to also look at the problem with AI and let's say the ChatGPT of supply chain is that the data is so disconnected. So if we would take shipments from, let's say, the 20 last years and say figure out what's going to be the model for the future, it's going to be very difficult because it doesn't have enough granularity to do the job. But it will be fast. It will not take a long time before we have this. I give it at least another maybe 1 or 2 years more than we should have this.
There's one item in AI that I'm noticing to jump in here. It's fascinating that a lot of AI machines that are being created and productized and being brought to the market are about creating information, creating content, creating some additional information. But the human brain is not wired to take an unlimited amount of information. There is hardly any AI that basically comprehends information and presents it to you in a fashion that basically makes it actionable for the human brain, right? And basically I see this for myself on a daily basis. It's like there's more and more, there's like the amount of content that's being created is not consumable anymore. Right. And so you will see this in the supply chain world as well, when it comes to visibility, when it comes into basically shipment data, in terms of stock data. Right. It's like comprehended in a way that it becomes actionable in a fashion that a human can still act on it.
Yeah. And, you know, we saw that with I've been working with data analytics for almost 10 years now. And when you take China as an example and you say, show me where's center of gravity for my where I should ship from, and it will not be a port, but you're telling the system we have a customer shipping to, let's say, New York, but where should I do the work in China? And it will take it based on the factory and not understanding the port. So there's a lot of things in these systems of what practically makes sense and what practically doesn't make sense at all. And I think there's still a lot to do there.
Yeah. Let's take some questions from the audience. So one question that just popped into my phone here: how could a company get started on the digitalization journey in 3 steps right now? So concrete, easy 3 steps. Dr. Freight.
So the first thing is basically like this is digitalization or however digital transformation is a big topic, right? And I would start basically with the key metric that you have. Is it gross profit or is it EBITDA that you want to focus on your company journey, and basically see what the major uplift is there, right? So very simple. Which of the processes are majorly manual where you have an uplift, or where do you want to grow your customers that you cannot approach right now, right? And then basically like when you combine this, really like just write down in a session, you can do this with sticky notes, right? And form the scope it, the project, write down the requirements, right? And then basically discuss this with your partners that are around, either with vendors, with customers, within the team, right? And then basically create a strategy around. And often what I found when I speak, for example, to our customers, which are forwarders, they're thinking basically like this end all be all technology. But a lot of technology is in the market. It's on the shelf. So don't try to invent the next big technology yourself. Go to vendors that are there and discuss it with them, that are focused in it, they can help you. Okay, so basically find one project, one problem, discuss it with your partners, and then find the right vendor for it. I mean, that's the 3 simple steps.
And take it off the shelf and don't get too ambitious.
Yeah,
small
exactly.
steps, not giant leaps.
Yeah.
Okay, good one. Hey, we got a couple of questions here. Anders, do you want to take the first one? Can you see it?
Yeah, we focus on driving down operational cost. Which technology should I be looking at? Well, I think when you want to drive down operational cost, and this goes back to discussions I had with quite a large customer of ours in my past. He was said, the management came to him and said, every year you need to drive down the cost by 10%. So he said, that means that after 10 years, all of my vendors are doing all the work for free. And that's not going to happen. So by squeezing your vendors and squeezing the relationship with your the execution partner is not the pathway you're going to drive down operational cost. So if you want to do this, it needs to come from one point, and that's one point only, and that is operational efficiency and cost avoidance. How can I do the right thing smarter with the right methodology at the right cadence? And it all comes down to how do you operate as a business. If you're selling to a market and the market would accept 30 days lead time, then you build a supply chain that allows for 30 days lead times, and all and everything is costed accordingly. But if you don't have a visualization and the data needed to make sure that you have that availability, the stock on hand, and you have to fly it in, all the margin is gone. So I think having the right business model, cost avoidance, have a planned execution across all markets and all entities, and avoid errors across the entire thing. And you need to be 100% digital for this to happen.
Philip, you mentioned a couple of off-the-shelf tools. Could you have a couple of examples, 1 or 2?
What for supply chain software? Obviously, Orchestra, right? Pretty obvious. But I mean, if you're looking, for example, if you're in the freight business, look into TMS. I mean, there's some obvious ones. So I don't want to do any name dropping here. But basically, like if you Google it, search it, or contact me, I'm happy to provide you with names in the TMS system. If you look into your ERP, you have the SAPs, the Oracles of the world that are out there. If you're looking into visibility tools, where is my shipment? Like you have 2, 3 there that are pretty dominant. So they're in every market. If you get started at something, there are these 2, 3 obvious ones, and either you Google it, you can contact me, you can research it, or ask ChatGPT, right? And say, hey, what are the obvious providers for shipment visibility or something like that, and see what comes out of it, right? For supply chain software, think of Orchestra.
Okay, very good. Thank you. There's another interesting question, and let's try to keep it brief. There's post-pandemic predicting that BCUs will take on more responsibility from forwarders and 3PLs. Do you agree, Philip?
Post-pandemic, the BCOs will take in responsible forwarders. Sorry, I need to maybe jump someone else. I would need to understand the question a little better.
Well, I mean,
I think it's bypassing the forwarder and go directly to the carrier.
Oh, okay. So here's basically the point, right? The freight business is a trust business, right? It's same with any travel with an airline. You don't care which airline you're actually traveling with, minus basically the miles and a little bit like which seat you're in and so on, unless something goes wrong and you need something you rely on, right? Why do you fly like a name brand carrier versus basically a low cost carrier? Because you rely on them that if they're in case of a weather strike, any disruption, you're safe, that they still bring you to the endpoint, right?
Yeah.
So what does it mean? That's trust, right? Mm-hmm. In the freight industry, trust is often relying to the person where you pick up the phone and say like, this person is handling my shipment, stepping in and doing the business for me. It's not like somewhere a person I cannot reach out to. And at the moment, I have a hard time believing that we have about, just in the US, we're about 6,000 forwarders, globally probably like between 40 and 60,000 forwarders, that the ocean carriers will be able to replicate all these endpoints, all these local touch points and trust factors that the forwarders have. And when you think of basically the forwarder margins is already so slim, there is not much gain there from ocean carriers to basically replicate this. So why do you want to do this and disrupt basically your customer base and when you're not able to replicate all these customer touch points? So maybe yes for the enterprise side, maybe yes on the digital side, but not in the area where you need trust, and that's the majority of small, medium-sized businesses that are importing and exporting. And so I don't know. I don't think they will be successful in a major stake on the small, medium-sized, only on the enterprise side, which they are already, right?
And I think I can add to that one. I think having people on the ground is absolutely essential, especially the smaller you are, because it might be that going direct is okay, but when something happens and the container is stuck at the Chicago rail point at 5 o'clock on a Friday and we urgently needed to get out, there's nobody who's going to pick up and do the job for you, pick up the phone and do the job for you. So you need to have connections. You need to have a partner that's reliable, that understands the need of their customers. And I would be hard to convince me that a shipping line will be able to offer those capabilities.
We have so many questions here. Are you guys okay to go over a little bit? Or do you have a hard time?
Yes, sure.
Philip, you too?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Todd, I think this is a good one for you. How can companies that don't have a vision of what they need to be convinced to encourage a digital transformation?
Yeah, I would say 2 easy words: jump in. Right. I mean, just start something, and I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, we can look at all the webinars, we can look at all the presentations and the white papers and all those things, and it doesn't make it real unless it's really delivering value to your corporation. So I would say, let's go, pick a use case that really delivers value. Like Philip had mentioned, let's talk about the metric, whether it's gross profit, EBITDA, some other metric that your company is driving for. What process impacts it the most, and then a methodology that I've kind of tried to use a little bit is what I call the 5 what ifs. And if you sit down with that process and say, what are we doing today, and if we want to make it more efficient, what if we did that, and what if we automated this piece of it, and then all of a sudden that leads you to the next step to say, well, that's great, we just did that piece of it. What if we took it a step further? And what if we took it a step further? And what if we took it a step further? And then it leads you to really a fully automated or a digitally optimized solution that really makes you more productive. And along that way, by jumping in and solving one of those pieces of that process puzzle, then that makes it real for you. So we can sit back and talk about a grandiose strategy, just like I did a little while ago, and talk about where that is. But I think it makes it real if you jump in and deliver value, and that will only compound and snowball and really accelerate that journey. So jump in with both feet on something small and prove it out in your company, and I think that goes a long way.
Very, very good. Philip, this is a good one for you here. Since AI and ML will automate and improve processes in logistics companies, what role can employees take to add value to work?
Yeah. So obviously the value of employees becomes more, not less, right? Because let's take this factor right now, a shipment process, right? There are functions in the shipment process that will be replaced by AI or ML, which are the key efficiency functions today. Meaning, if I just punch in data, will be replaced, right, by one kind of technology. But there are other functions in the shipment process, which is coordination work, right? Meaning I need to coordinate among different parties. That might be replaced, but then there are exceptions. And these exceptions are where employees need to be basically trained. For example, I ordered 5 pickups, 4 worked. That the machine, 1 didn't work. An employee needs to step in and basically needs to find solutions for it. That's the coordination work or the expertise work. Customs, for example, is something where out of all shipments that I've handled before, I have a customs classification, and it works automatically. But then there are some where the classification needs to be either reclassified, needs to be looked at. So it's basically this exception-based, where employees need to kick in. And what does it require? It needs to basically, where I'm saying the value needs to increase, it needs to be more training to employees. So what is, when you implement an AI or ML process or any kind of automation, the employees that you have, you also need to focus on them and focus on the training of their knowledge, of their process, so that they can step in when the machine isn't working.
Mm-hmm. Anders, we got a couple of questions around visibility, which is a good one for you. How to increase?
I see some juicy ones here.
There's 2 ones. So how do you get visibility, and how does it add value?
Well, I mean, the value is without a doubt. Okay, so let's just understand that one. There is 100% value. Whatever you do, even to Todd's point, start small and then grow afterwards. Don't try to have a 2-year process of gathering all the requirements and then start building something that's going to take 5 years, because after the 7 years of that project, it's already outdated. So just get started and make it alive. Yeah. I think the other question, which I also like a lot, is, of course, when you have many data sources and a lot of different systems, different languages, these are challenges that can be solved. It's not a difficult one to solve with the technology we have today. We can have data in different languages. We have capabilities to translate. We can have translation tables. Data can be normalized across multiple different sources. And it just comes down to having your head in the right location and a very clear and clear view of how you want to solve these things, and visibility and transparency will happen. So I think it's having the right kind of people with the right understanding of how to do, what to focus on, what to, let's say, fail fast on not doing, and don't be afraid of failing. That's a starting point. Yeah, you will fail, especially when you start looking at big enterprises. And Heiner, in my career, I've been working with one company. They had 150 different ERP and planning systems, all different local versions and what have you. Okay, and it's an absolute nightmare. But once you start normalizing the data, you start building. The term is the digital twin. You can normalize data to a very high degree, and with technology today, you can do outlier corrections. You can do all kinds of things with machine learning and AI that can autocorrect, can auto-predict, can automatically fix the problem that you have. But you need to supervise it. Yeah, so it's somehow supervised learning if we use the ML methodology. So it's a little bit supervised learning. You need to be able to correct it so that it's learning and doing the right thing. So next time you do it, and it's done correctly. So there's an absolutely easy way to go forward, but yeah, you need to start first and foremost. That's the first point.
Yeah, very good. So amazing points. I think in summary, you say find the why and define the why, have a clear strategy, take small steps to ensure what Todd emphasized many times, that you've got payback along the way, and build momentum as you go forward, and sort of bring the people along with you on the journey, you know. So I think it's been from
but don't staff it with interns, okay? You need to have somebody who really understand domain knowledge. That's the important part.
No, agreed. So I think it's been an amazing session. Todd, Philip, and Anders, thank you so much for participating.